After completing the Conquer mission, I returned to my original world almost without a shred of nostalgia, but by then, there was no longer a place for me beside my fiancée who had regained her health. She was still gentle with me, still lay in my arms at night, whispering words of love into my ear. Yet, at the slightest message from my younger brother saying, "The power's out, I can't see because of my night blindness," she would slip away from my side. Her priorities had shifted completely during my absence. Now my brother came first. Love split in two. I didn't want it anymore. On the 99th time she left me behind, I summoned the system. "I want to return to the mission world," the system's cold voice prompted. "Host's return to the mission world requires reclaiming all accumulated points. All the health values you exchanged for Amelia will become invalid, and she will once again be terminally ill. Are you sure?" I answered without hesitation. "Yes." Chapter 1. The system will provide you with 72 hours of preparation time. Please arrange your affairs accordingly. That cold mechanical voice ended its last broadcast in my mind, pronouncing the death sentence of my love without mercy. I replied calmly, "Got it. That's it. Everything should end." I had just managed to steady my emotions when the sound of the password lock's beeping came from the entrance. Amelia was back. "Richard, why don't you turn on the lights? What are you thinking about? Sitting here alone in the dark?" She walked over and, as always, flicked on the crystal chandelier in the living room. Warm, dazzling light poured down instantly. Unused to it, I closed my eyes briefly and didn't answer her. She seemed not to notice the displeasure on my face and spoke on her own. "Tonight is Bruno's birthday party. I came to pick you up. Go change your clothes. Don't keep him waiting." My heart felt as though an icy hand had gripped it hard, pain pricking densely until I could barely breathe. I thought I had already gone numb, but hearing his name from her lips still hurt this much. "Still," I nodded, forcing down that sharp pain with all my strength. "Okay, because these were my last 3 days in this world, my last 3 days with her. I no longer wanted, nor needed, any more arguments or turmoil." When I appeared at the grand, glittering entrance of the banquet hall with Amelia on my arm, Bruno, the star of tonight's celebration, came over at once. His gaze didn't land on me in the slightest, but I didn't care. The banquet had already gone on for a while before he suddenly seemed to notice my existence, covering his mouth in mock surprise. "Ah, brother, what are you doing over there in the corner? I didn't even see you." My mistake. I'll apologize with a drink. I'll punish myself first." As he spoke, he raised his glass to down it all at once, but just as his hand lifted, his wrist tilted suddenly, and the entire glass of icy red wine spilled onto my light-colored suit jacket. The expensive fabric was instantly stained with a glaring red, clinging tightly to my shirt underneath, leaving me in complete disarray. "Ah." Bruno let out an exaggerated cry and fumbled to grab napkins to wipe me clean. I'm sorry, brother." My hand slipped. I instinctively stepped back to avoid his false concern, but my foot slipped on the edge near the pool. In that moment of lost balance, I caught a glimpse of triumph flashing in Bruno's eyes. The icy, bone-chilling pool water swallowed me whole in an instant. My suit jacket, heavy with water, bound my arms tightly and dragged me down. I struggled beneath the water, choking several times, before I finally surfaced in a wretched state. Chaos erupted on the shore. Bruno's face had gone pale with fright as he stammered excuses. "Amelia. I didn't mean to. I really didn't mean to." How did brother fall in? Clutching the edge of the pool, I raised my head to look at the woman I had loved for 10 years. She was holding Bruno tightly in her arms, soothing him softly. The pain in my heart had long since numbed. For no reason, I felt like laughing, so I did. Only then did she furrow her brows and finally look at me in the water, her gaze devoid of pity, filled only with reproach. "Richard, today is Bruno's birthday. Don't make a scene. Make a scene." So, all of my humiliation, embarrassment, and bone-deep grievances were, in her eyes, nothing more than me being unreasonable. I dragged myself onto the shore with difficulty and waved a hand. "My clothes are dirty. I'll go back and change. You all enjoy yourselves." Then, under the gaze of everyone present, I turned and walked out of the suffocating banquet hall. Chapter 2. I took a taxi alone back to the marital home Amelia and I shared, greeted only by endless darkness and cold air. This had once been my warmest harbor, the only force keeping me going in the mission world. I took a quick shower, then began to pack my things bit by bit. Clothes and some personal items I packed quickly. Then there were our photos. They were placed in delicate frames, on the bedside tables in the bedroom, on the shelves in the living room. One by one, I removed them from their frames. With every piece of my belongings I took away, this home drifted further from me. When the last item that belonged to me was packed into the box, I looked around. The house was so clean it was as if I had never been there at all. Dragging several large boxes, I drove to a waste incineration plant, paid extra for them to burn everything overnight. For the first time, I truly felt the meaning of one phrase, reduced to ashes. My 10 years of love, my past, were all reduced to ashes. When I returned home after it all, dawn had already broken. Amelia hadn't sent me any message, which meant she hadn't come home at all. I picked up my phone, stared at the screen, my fingers hovering for a long time before I typed, word by word, "The day after tomorrow is our 7th anniversary. Do you still remember?" The message sank like a stone, without the slightest ripple. It wasn't until noon that my phone chimed. Remember. I let out a self-mocking smile. As always, she remembered all our dates, just no longer loved me. I took a deep breath, pressing down the trembling in my fingers, and asked, "Then, can you come back to spend it with me?" This time, her reply came quickly. "Okay, I'll definitely come back early that day to be with you. Don't overthink it." Okay, that "okay" carried a faint note of gentle admonition, almost coaxing, like soothing an immature partner sulking over last night's party. I stared at that message for a very, very long time. To her, I was nothing more than an ornament whose emotions occasionally needed pacifying. Slowly, I typed a single word, "Okay." I wanted to leave the last bit of dignity between us, and also put a full stop on my life in this world. So that day I got up early and went to the nearest supermarket to buy lots of fresh ingredients. Sweet and sour pork ribs, Coca-Cola chicken wings, steamed base, as well as corn, carrots, and fresh pork ribs, all her favorites. I spent the whole afternoon busy in the kitchen. The range hood roared, pots and pans clanged. At last, this cold house had a hint of life and warmth. I even clumsily followed an online tutorial to bake a small chiffon cake in the oven. When it came out, the surface was a bit cracked, the appearance far from perfect, but I still carefully spread cream on it and decorated it with fresh strawberries. It was my heartfelt gesture, my final one. At 6 in the evening, as the sky grew dark, I set all the carefully cooked dishes on the table, turned off all the lights in the living room, leaving only the flickering candlelight on the dining table. I sat at the table and began to wait for her, wait for my heroine, to attend this final date. Chapter 3. Time passed, second by second. The clock on the wall ticked, like counting down the final seconds of my pitiful love. 7 o'clock. The dishes began to cool. I carried them back to the kitchen, reheated them in the microwave, and brought them out again. 8 o'clock. The soup had already gone cold. I didn't bother to warm it up anymore. 9 o'clock. The candle on the cake had melted into a pool of red wax. Like solidified blood and tears, it was nearly burnt out. 10 o'clock. My heart, like the food on the table, grew colder bit by bit, until it was frozen solid. 11 sharp. Just when I thought there would be no reply tonight, my phone lit up at last. A WeChat notification popped up. It was from Amelia. "Sorry, Richard. An emergency meeting came up at the company. I won't be back tonight." Below it, she had attached a photo as proof. In the photo, she sat in that wide executive chair, rubbing her temples with one hand. Obvious exhaustion written on her beautiful face. The background showed her spotless desk and the huge floor-to-ceiling window behind her. The city's dazzling nightscape outside. Everything looked so reasonable, flawless. If I hadn't seen the man's suit jacket casually draped over the leather sofa in the corner of the office. That style, I'd seen it before. At Bruno's birthday banquet, he was wearing that very one. I stared at the photo, at that glaring patch of dark gray fabric, for a full 5 minutes. Then I started to laugh. At first softly, then louder and louder, my chest heaving violently, until tears streamed down my face. One by one, the burning hot tears fell onto the icy dining table, cooling instantly. I had still been hoping for a perfect ending, but of course the outcome was inevitable. In that moment my heart finally went still, not even the slightest reluctance left. I wiped my face roughly and replied, "It's okay. Work is important. Take care of yourself." I didn't look again at the table full of cold, stiff food, nor at this home I had once cherished but now found suffocating. The door clicked softly shut behind me, sealing me off from that world. I took a taxi to her company. The night wind was cold, blowing in through the crack of the car window, stinging my cheeks. The system's cold mechanical voice sounded in my mind right on cue. "Host, there is 1 hour remaining in the preparation period. The return program will initiate immediately upon the cessation of your vital signs in this world." I closed my eyes and responded softly, "Got it." The taxi stopped steadily in front of Mu Group's headquarters. I walked unhindered up to the rooftop, pushing open the heavy iron door. A powerful gust of wind rushed in, nearly knocking me off my feet. My short hair whipped into disarray. Step by step, I walked to the edge of the rooftop and looked down. The lights of the entire city beneath my feet merged into a brilliant, dazzling river of stars, beautiful and cold. I timed it precisely, matching the system's countdown to the final second. 3, 2, 1. I spread my arms, closed my eyes, and leapt. My body plummeted rapidly. The wind howled madly past my ears, the weightless sensation bringing me an unprecedented lightness and release. As I fell through the massive floor-to-ceiling windows of the executive office, I saw the two bodies tangled together. I also saw Amelia. She seemed to sense something. Her face, lost in passion, suddenly froze. Then she lifted her head, instinctively looking toward the window. Our eyes met precisely through the pane of glass in midair. I saw her expression shift instantly from hazy desire to sheer terror and disbelief. Chapter 4. I hit the ground with a heavy crash, my body colliding with the cold, hard concrete, the dull sound echoing loudly. Agony surged through my limbs and bones like a tide, the sound of my skeleton shattering inch by inch vividly audible. But strangely, I didn't feel much pain, only an overwhelming sense of release. In the final second before my consciousness faded, I saw Amelia, disheveled, rushing out of the revolving doors of the building like someone gone mad. She hadn't even had time to put her suit jacket back on. Several buttons of her shirt had burst open, and her normally immaculate hairstyle was a complete mess. That face, always composed and calm, was now etched with fear and despair as if her entire world had collapsed. She ran toward me, stumbling, utterly frantic, and in my ears, there was only the cold yet melodious sound of the system. Host's vital signs detected as ceased. Return program initiated. Severing causal ties with this world. 10%. 50%. 100%. Severance complete. Amelia's world was torn apart in that instant, when she saw that familiar figure falling like a kite with its string cut through the massive floor-to-ceiling window. Her ability to think was ripped away, leaving only a terrifying blankness. Those eyes he had kissed countless times, always carrying a gentle smile, in that moment of falling, looked back at her, calm, even tinged with a hint of pity. In that moment, time seemed to stretch endlessly. She watched him fall, and fall, like a leaf torn by a violent wind, until he vanished from her sight. No. A scream erupted from her throat, inhuman in its despair. She shoved the still bewildered Bruno off her, not even pausing to fix her clothes, and staggered out of the office. She shoved past everyone in the hallway, ignoring the secretary's shocked calls, running for the elevator like a madwoman. The elevator numbers descended slowly, each second stretching like a century. She couldn't wait. She turned and bolted for the stairwell, taking 3 steps at a time. Her lungs felt like they were about to burst, her heart pounding wildly in her chest as if it would leap out the next second. One thought filled her mind: it can't be him. It absolutely can't be him. Richard loved her so much. How could he ever leave her? This had to be him sulking again, punishing her for missing tonight. This had to be some cruel joke he was playing on her. Yes, that must be it. But when she finally burst out of the building and saw that glaring red pool of blood and the horrified screams of the crowd, all her self-deceptions were ground to dust by reality. She stumbled forward, pushing through the crowd, her legs giving out as she fell heavily to her knees beside the cold pool of blood. It was her Richard. He was unrecognizable, the blood beneath him winding and flowing, staining his white shirt like a shattered rose in full bloom. His eyes were tightly closed, his face showing no pain, only a heart-wrenching serenity. Richard. Amelia reached out her hand, her fingers trembling uncontrollably, but she didn't even have the courage to touch him. How could this be? He had just messaged her that morning, asking if she remembered their anniversary. She had clearly promised him she would come back early to be with him tonight. Why was he here? Ah! She clutched her head, letting out a desperate, caged animal howl. The pain in that sound silenced all the noise around her. She didn't dare imagine that just minutes ago, she had been upstairs in the office, entwined with another man, and her lover, outside her window, had ended himself and everything between them in the most final way. This realization stabbed into her heart like a poisoned blade, twisting madly, shredding her insides into a bloody pulp. Her vision went black. She completely lost consciousness. Chapter 5. When Amelia woke up, she was already in a VIP hospital ward. The sharp smell of disinfectant filled her nose, and a cold needle pierced the back of her hand. She sat up abruptly, yanking out the 4-line, and, ignoring the doctor and nurses trying to stop her, she tried to get out of bed like a madwoman. Richard, where is my Richard? Her voice was hoarse, as though scraped by sandpaper. President, please calm down, sir. A young nurse instinctively wanted to say that Richard was already dead. Where is he? Tell me. Amelia's eyes were bloodshot, and the terrifying pressure in her tone made the little nurse flinch, unable to utter another word. At last, her assistant arrived and carefully told her, President, your husband's body has already been taken to the funeral home. Funeral home. The word struck her like a heavy hammer to the skull. She staggered, nearly collapsing, and had to be held up by her assistant. Prepare the car. She shook off the assistant's hand. Her voice carried no emotion, but was as cold as the dead of winter. Take me home. She didn't believe it. She didn't believe Richard was really gone. He must be waiting for her at home, waiting for her to explain. waiting for her to coax him. But when her trembling fingers pressed the code and opened the familiar door, what greeted her was only coldness and silence. She stumbled to switch on the living room lights, the pale glow instantly illuminating the room, and illuminating suffocating emptiness. Too clean. The place was excessively clean. On the living room shelves had once been their photos together, the kiss beneath the Eiffel Tower in Paris, their embrace by the sea in Santorini, their soft smiles under the cherry blossoms in Kyoto. Now, those delicate frames stood empty. She rushed into the bedroom. On the nightstand, the photo she loved most, him sleeping with his head resting on her arm, was gone. She opened the wardrobe. His half of the closet was empty. All the suits she had handpicked for him, not a single one remained. She dashed into the bathroom. On the sink, his blue toothbrush, his mint shaving foam, all gone. Every trace of Richard in this house had been erased. Erased so cleanly it was as if he had never lived here. As if he was only a dream she had dreamed for 10 years. No, impossible. Amelia collapsed to the floor, burying her hands in her hair, growling in pain. Like someone possessed, she tore through drawers and boxes, desperate to find even a single belonging of his to prove he had really existed. But she found nothing. He had left so decisively, taking everything with him, leaving her only an empty shell, a shell filled with their memories, but without a single object to testify they had ever been real. Her mind, in that moment, completely shattered. She finally realized he truly no longer wanted her. Scenes from the past came flooding back. She remembered the first time she met him, in the university library, where he sat quietly by the window, sunlight on him, beautiful as a painting. She remembered when she was gravely ill, and he never left her side, accompanying her through chemotherapy, caring for her daily needs. She remembered how, to raise money for her surgery, he had gone off to join some special mission she hadn't understood at the time, one said to be life-threatening. All she knew was, he had been gone for 3 years, and her body had slowly recovered. Chapter 6. In the year he was gone, her frail, sickly younger brother Bruno began to appear frequently in her life. He would bring homemade soup to the hospital to see her, clumsily tell her jokes. When she vomited in pain from the side effects of chemotherapy, he would silently stand by, handing her a cup of warm water. She admitted that in those darkest, most helpless days, Bruno's presence gave her a thread of comfort. So when Richard came back, she couldn't immediately push Bruno away. Naively, she thought she could manage both. One was the lover who had walked through life and death with her. The other was the younger brother who had cared for her. She thought she could handle it well, but she was wrong. She remembered the first night after Richard came back when they fell asleep in each other's arms. She kissed his forehead, whispering again and again, "I love you." But when midnight came and her phone lit up, it was a message from Bruno. "Amelia, there's thunder outside. I'm scared." She hesitated for a moment, then gently pulled her arm from Richard's and got up to dress. Richard woke behind her, his voice rough from sleep. "Where are you going?" "Bruno's home alone and scared. I'm going to check on him." She remembered he stayed silent for a long time, so long she thought he'd fallen asleep again, before he softly answered, From then on, scenes like that repeated countless times. "Bruno's, the power's out. It's dark. I'm scared." "Bruno's, I've got a fever and no one's here to take care of me." "Bruno's, I twisted my ankle. It hurts so bad I can't walk." Each time, under Richard's calm gaze, she chose to leave. She mistook his calmness for silent consent and understanding. She even felt relieved for it, relieved that her Richard was always so mature and steady, until that night at the birthday banquet, when he climbed out of the pool, soaked to the skin, and those beautiful eyes no longer held their old light. Only deadened numbness remained, and she still used those words, "Don't make a scene," to snuff out the last bit of hope he had. In truth, he hadn't been unhurt, hadn't been unwronged. He had just gathered all his disappointment together, and in the end, used his life to give her the harshest, deepest blow. Ah. Amelia curled up in pain on the cold floor, like a child abandoned by the whole world, letting out a desperate wail. She had been wrong. She had been terribly, unforgivably wrong. She had mistaken glass for pearls and shattered her one true rare treasure with her own hands. Chapter 7. "Amelia, could you please open the door? I made your favorite pigeon soup." Outside the door came Bruno's timid voice. Amelia suddenly scrambled up from the floor and rushed over to yank the door open. When Bruno saw her bloodshot eyes and haggard appearance, he was startled. The thermos in his hand nearly slipped to the ground. "Amelia, you're scaring me. Get out." Amelia's voice was like that of a ghost crawling out from hell, steeped in bone-chilling cold. Bruno's face turned pale instantly, tears welling in his eyes. I was only worried about you. I told you to get out. Don't you understand?" Amelia slapped the thermos out of his hand. The boiling soup spilled all over the floor, splashing onto Bruno's hand. He cried out in pain. If it weren't for you constantly pretending to be pitiful, begging for sympathy, how would he She couldn't go on. Her heart hurt as though it was being torn apart. Every time she saw Bruno's pitiful face, she thought of Richard's calm, despairing eyes as he fell. It was her. She and this man together had forced Richard to his death. I didn't. Amelia. My brother's death had nothing to do with me. He was the one who couldn't take it anymore. Bruno sobbed in defense. Get out. Amelia pointed toward the elevator, each word squeezed through clenched teeth. From now on, don't ever appear in front of me again. Otherwise, I don't know what I might do. The madness and murderous intent in her eyes made Bruno shiver with fear. He didn't dare say another word. Stumbling and fleeing down the hall, Amelia closed the door, leaned against the cold wooden panel, and slowly slid down to the floor. She gave Richard the grandest funeral imaginable. The media of the entire city came. On the massive electronic screens, his most handsome photos played on a loop, but the visitors who came to mourn him were pitifully few. Only then did she realize, with heartbreaking sorrow, that she knew nothing of his world. She didn't know if he had any friends, didn't know where his family was. All she knew was that he once said, in this world, he only had her, and she had lost him. After the funeral, Amelia's health visibly declined at an alarming speed. One day, while handling documents at the office, she was seized by a violent cough and spat a mouthful of blood onto the pristine white papers. A hospital examination confirmed it. The illness had returned. Because of her fragile mental state, the cancer cells spread several times faster than before. The doctor told her she had less than 3 months left. When Amelia heard the news, she actually laughed. Perhaps this was for the best. She could finally go and be with her Richard. Bruno somehow heard about her condition. Crying, he begged to visit her at the hospital, but she refused to see him. Lying in the hospital bed, she grew thinner day by day, her consciousness blurring. Between moments of wakefulness and delirium, she always saw Richard. He looked just as he had the first time they met, wearing a white shirt, sitting by the window in the library, quietly reading. She would walk toward him, wanting to speak, but he would vanish like an illusion. Over and over, she repeated this scene in her dreams. In her final moments, she clutched her assistant's hand tightly, summoning her last bit of strength to whisper the same name again and again. Richard, my Richard. Chapter 8. I watched expressionlessly as the system projected Amelia's final journey. There was no sense of imagined relief, no trace of sadness. Inside, I was as calm as a pool of dead water. Perhaps, at the moment I leapt from the rooftop, everything between her and me had already, truly, come to an end. Her regret, her pain, her death, they no longer had anything to do with me. The karma of the previous world has been settled. Does the host confirm deletion of this memory segment? The system's cold voice pulled me back from my brief trance. I shook my head. No, leave it. Let it be a reminder to myself. Understood. The system replied. As per the protocol, upon completing the final conquered task, the system has cleared your original identity information from the previous world and erased all traces of your existence from the memories of everyone related to you in that world. Now, you will begin a new life with a new identity. As the white light faded, I found myself standing inside a bright and cozy shop. The air was filled with the sweet scent of butter and frosting. Sunlight streamed in through the spotless floor-to-ceiling windows, casting dappled light and shadow across the wooden floor. Menus I had drawn by hand hung on the walls, and the counter displayed all kinds of delicate, adorable desserts. This was the dream I'd always had, owning my own dessert shop. The system was actually being quite thoughtful. I smiled, tied on my apron, and began my new life in this world. The days passed peacefully and meaningfully. Every day I baked cakes, made cookies, brewed coffee and milk tea in different flavors. Watching customers' faces light up with satisfaction, I felt genuine joy. I thought I would spend the rest of my life like this, safe and steady, until that afternoon. The shop's doorbell chimed crisply, and a woman in a professional suit stepped inside, tall and slender, strikingly beautiful with an air of competence. Just by standing there, she made the little dessert shop feel suddenly small. When I saw her face, the piping bag in my hand nearly slipped to the floor. Freya, one of my former conquest targets. How had she found this place? I instinctively called out to the system in my head. Didn't you say all their memories had been erased? Please rest assured, the memory deletion program has been confirmed. The system's tone remained calm and unruffled. Scan complete. Target individual Freya's perception of you, stranger. I exhaled slightly and forced myself to stay composed, putting on my standard professional smile. Miss, what would you like to order? Freya's eyes swept over the shop before finally settling on my face. In those sharp eyes there was a hint of curiosity, and a flicker of something even she herself hadn't realized, confusion. She didn't answer my question right away. Instead, she silently looked at me for a long time, so long that the smile on my face began to stiffen. Just as I was thinking she might have recognized me, she finally spoke, her voice cool and magnetic. I'm not here to buy anything. My heart skipped a beat. She continued, a few days ago, My company ordered afternoon tea from your shop. Among the items was a strawberry chiffon cake. She paused, as if searching for the right words. I tasted a flavor I'll never forget. My heartbeat faltered. That strawberry chiffon cake was the first thing I had tried to make after coming to this world. It was also the only cake I'd ever made for Amelia, on our 7th anniversary. From that day on, Freya's gaze locked firmly onto me, that look almost frightening in its intensity. I've had an obsession. It tells me I must find the person who made that cake. My hand holding the piping bag unconsciously tightened. Her eyes, once cold, now gradually softened with warmth. There was even a faint, earnest plea in them. Hello, my name is Freya. She extended her hand, the corners of her lips lifting into the slightest curve. May I have the honor of getting to know you?